Imagine walking through the winding streets of a medieval city, your footsteps echoing on ancient cobblestones, completely unaware that the very ground beneath you holds a secret, a breathtaking celestial map invisible from where you stand, designed to be seen only from the heavens above. For centuries, these hidden wonders remained concealed, known only to the architects who envisioned them and the skies that watched over them. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of history's most captivating mysteries, the astonishing architectural illusions woven into pre-Renaissance cities, designs so sophisticated and precise that they redefine what we thought possible from an era often misunderstood as dark or simplistic. What if I told you that entire cities were laid out not just for defense or daily life, but as living works of art, masterpieces of geometry, astronomy, and sacred symbolism that could only be fully appreciated from a bird's eye view? From sprawling piazzas that double as solar calendars to street patterns that trace the constellations, these illusions reveal a level of mathematical genius and artistic vision that rivals, and in some cases, surpasses the celebrated innovations of the Renaissance. This was a time when builders thought in multiple dimensions, crafting spaces that served both human needs and divine harmony, embedding cosmic order into the very fabric of urban life, all without the aid of modern technology, drones, or satellites. In this video, we'll journey together through 22 of these extraordinary marvels, each one a testament to the creativity, precision, and spiritual ambition of medieval minds. You'll discover how ordinary squares, cathedrals, and canals conceal extraordinary patterns, hidden geometries, optical tricks, and celestial alignments that have waited centuries for the right perspective to reveal their true glory. So prepare to see the past with new eyes, to step into a world where every stone, every street, every shadow tells a story far grander than it first appears. This isn't just a tour of ancient cities, it's an invitation to witness one of history's greatest hidden art galleries, etched into the earth itself. To truly grasp the brilliance of these aerial illusions, we need to step back in time and into the minds of the medieval architects who conceived them. This was an era centuries before human flight, where the very idea of seeing a city from above was reserved for birds, angels, and God himself. So why would anyone invest immense effort into creating intricate designs that, as far as they knew, no human would ever properly see? The answer lies in a world profoundly different from our own. For medieval thinkers, the universe was not a random collection of matter but a carefully ordered creation, a reflection of divine harmony. Every element, from the motions of the planets to the structures built by human hands, was believed to be interconnected in a great chain of being. City planning, therefore, was never just about practicality, it was a sacred act. Architects saw themselves as collaborators in this divine order, encoding cosmic principles into stone, brick, and street layout. A city's design was a prayer made visible, a physical attempt to mirror the perfection of the heavens here on earth. This spiritual drive fueled the creation of patterns that, while invisible at ground level, were believed to imbue the city with spiritual significance and divine protection, making the urban space itself a conduit between the earthly and the celestial. This pursuit of cosmic harmony was beautifully practical. These hidden designs almost always served a dual purpose, seamlessly blending the spiritual with the utilitarian. A network of gutters and drainage channels might be arranged to trace the patterns of a sacred geometric symbol, ensuring that even rainwater flowed in accordance with divine proportion. Defensive city walls, while formidable from the ground, could be aligned from certain hilltops to mark the sunrise on the summer solstice, turning a military structure into a giant seasonal calendar. This multifunctional approach reveals a sophisticated integration of belief and daily life. The city wasn't just a place to live and work. It was a living, breathing entity designed to operate in rhythm with the universe itself. Every element, no matter how mundane, held a deeper layer of meaning, creating an environment where the sacred was woven into the very fabric of everyday existence. What makes these achievements utterly astonishing is the profoundly limited technology available. Medieval architects lacked satellite imagery, computer-aided design, and even basic aerial reconnaissance. Their entire toolkit consisted of simple, yet brilliantly applied instruments, ropes and stakes for measuring and creating large-scale geometric forms, wooden templates for shaping consistent elements, and astrolabes or quadrants for calculating precise astronomical alignments. Imagine the painstaking process of laying out a massive zodiac pattern across an entire city using nothing but ropes, sighting poles, and mathematical calculations performed by hand. The margin for error was virtually non-existent. A single miscalculation in an angle or distance could throw off the entire pattern, rendering it unintelligible from any vantage point. This required not only incredible precision but also a deep, intuitive understanding of geometry and spatial relationships. They were thinking in 3 dimensions on a colossal scale, visualizing the final, hidden form even as they worked entirely from the ground. This context transforms these illusions from mere curiosities into profound testaments to human ingenuity. They represent a perfect marriage of spiritual aspiration and technical mastery. The architects were driven by a desire to connect with the divine, but they executed that vision with the sharpest mathematical and engineering minds of their age. They were both artists and scientists, mystics and engineers. Understanding this dual motivation allows us to appreciate these hidden wonders not as frivolous decorations, but as the serious, intentional work of visionary thinkers who believed that building a city was one of the highest forms of honoring the order of creation. For nearly a millennium, these magnificent designs remained the best-kept secrets of the medieval world, hidden in plain sight, patiently waiting for a viewpoint that simply did not exist for the people who walked those streets. The true revolution in our understanding didn't come from dusty archives or new historical documents, but from a dramatic shift in perspective, literally. The advent of accessible aerial photography, followed by satellite imagery and now drone technology, has handed us a key to a door we never knew was locked. We've been granted the very perspective that was, for all intents and purposes in the medieval mind, reserved for the divine. This technological leap has fundamentally rewritten chapters of architectural history, pulling back the curtain on a level of intentionality and sophistication that ground-level observation could never reveal. What generations of historians and tourists experienced as charmingly chaotic, organic, and seemingly random street layouts now resolve into breathtakingly precise and deliberate patterns. From the dizzying heights of a drone's camera, a tangled web of alleys suddenly snaps into focus as a perfect spiral, a sacred geometric shape like the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio, meticulously plotted across an entire city district. Clusters of buildings that appeared haphazard from the sidewalk are revealed to form massive, coherent symbols, crosses, stars, or celestial maps, their outlines traced by rooftops and courtyards. What felt like a simple, functional public square at ground level is unveiled from above as the centerpiece of a vast geometric composition, with streets radiating out like spokes on a wheel or lines on an astronomical chart. This isn't just a matter of seeing a bigger picture, It's about seeing an entirely different picture, one that was always there, encoded into the urban fabric by architects thinking on a grand, almost godlike scale. This radical shift in vantage point forces us to completely reimagine the creative process of these master builders. They were not merely constructing individual buildings, they were composing immense, invisible paintings on the canvas of the city itself. They had to hold two competing realities in their minds simultaneously: the human scale experience of a pilgrim, merchant, or citizen navigating narrow, shaded streets, and the divine scale perception of a perfect, harmonious symbol only appreciable from an impossible height. This required an extraordinary feat of three-dimensional imagination and mathematical foresight. They were designing for an audience they knew would never physically see their work, trusting that the spiritual and cosmic order embedded in their designs would exert its influence regardless, blessing the city and its inhabitants through its hidden perfection. The impact of these aerial revelations has sent shockwaves through the academic community, compelling a sweeping reassessment of pre-Renaissance intellectual achievement. The mathematical precision required to execute these large-scale patterns, accounting for elevation changes, pre-existing structures, and the limitations of their simple tools, is nothing short of astounding. It speaks to a deep, practical mastery of geometry, trigonometry, and spatial reasoning that was far more advanced than previously credited to the medieval era. We can no longer view these periods as a simplistic prelude to the Renaissance. Instead, we must see them as a different but equally profound flowering of human genius, one that expressed its most complex ideas not in treatises alone, but in stone, brick, and the very layout of life itself. The sky, once the sole domain of their faith, has now become our most powerful ally in uncovering the breathtaking scope of their vision. Now, let's step into the heart of Siena, into the famous shell-shaped Piazza del Campo, and prepare to have your perception of this public space completely transformed. At ground level, it's a breathtaking expanse of red brick, a bustling social hub where people gather, markets thrive, and the famous palio horse race erupts in a whirl of color and passion. You feel the gentle, almost imperceptible slope of the pavement under your feet. You see the patterns of the brickwork radiating outward, but you are, quite literally, standing on a secret. The true genius of this piazza is not just in its beauty, but in its function as one of medieval Europe's most sophisticated and clandestine timekeeping instruments, a monumental solar calendar designed to be read from the heavens. To appreciate this illusion, you need to ascend, climb the narrow, winding stairs of the Torre del Mangia, the slender tower that has watched over the square for centuries. As you emerge onto the viewing platform high above the murmur of the crowd, the piazza unfolds beneath you not as a simple square, but as a meticulously segmented diagram. From this godlike vantage point, the brickwork reveals itself to be divided into 9 distinct sectors, fanning out from the base of the tower like slices of a giant pie. These aren't arbitrary decorative choices, they are the calibrated face of a colossal sundial, with the tower itself acting as the gnomon, the central structure that casts the defining shadow. The magic happens with the movement of the sun. Throughout the day, and more dramatically across the seasons, the shadow cast by the Torre del Mangia sweeps across these 9 segments. Each sector corresponds to a specific period of the medieval day, a system of timekeeping that divided daylight into equal hours, which of course changed in length with the seasons. The shadow's edge would touch specific brick lines or markers, silently indicating the time to those who knew how to read it. During the solstices, the longest and shortest days of the year, the shadow would trace its absolute longest or shortest path across the divisions, providing a spectacular, public, and utterly accurate astronomical display. This transformed the entire piazza into a community clock, allowing merchants to coordinate their business, citizens to plan their days, and the city to operate in harmonious rhythm with the cosmos itself. The engineering behind this is where the medieval mind truly dazzles. The precise slope of the piazza, that gentle incline you feel underfoot, was not an accident of topography. It was a calculated masterstroke. The architects had to precisely angle this massive surface to ensure the moving shadow would fall correctly across each of the 9 sectors throughout the entire year, accounting for the sun's dramatically changing altitude in the sky between summer and winter. This required an intimate and advanced understanding of solar angles, spherical astronomy, and geometry. They were effectively building a complex scientific instrument at an urban scale using nothing more than brick, mortar, and profound intellectual ambition. The fact that this precise calibration has remained accurate for centuries is a testament to their flawless execution, and herein lies the beautiful contradiction of the Piazza del Campo. For the citizens going about their daily lives within it, the grand design was invisible. They benefited from its function by reading the shadow's position, yet they remained unaware of the perfect geometric pattern they were standing upon. The calendar was hidden in plain sight, its full glory reserved for the elevated view, for the tower guards, for the privileged few, and symbolically for the divine. It is a perfect metaphor for the medieval world itself, a place where the mundane and the miraculous, the practical and the spiritual, were seamlessly woven together into the fabric of everyday life, creating a masterpiece that only time and a change of perspective could ever fully reveal. But to truly grasp the illusion of Chartres, you must change your perspective entirely. Imagine climbing the worn stone steps to the cathedral's choir loft, high above the nave floor. From this elevated vantage point, the labyrinth undergoes a miraculous transformation. The confusing, winding path you saw from below suddenly resolves into a breathtakingly precise geometric diagram. It is no longer just a maze, it is a perfect cosmic map. At its heart lies a stunning mathematical truth. The labyrinth is composed of 12 concentric circles, a number rich with sacred meaning. These rings represent the medieval conception of the celestial spheres, the 12-layered heavens that were believed to rotate around the earth, each governing a different celestial body and angelic choir, all moving in perfect divine harmony. From the choir loft, the pilgrim's path is revealed not as a random meandering, but as a symbolic journey through the entire ordered universe, a walk through the cosmos itself, all contained within the confines of the cathedral floor. This aerial revelation unlocks a second, even more profound layer of hidden design. The dimensions and proportions of the labyrinth are not arbitrary. They are in perfect conversation with the cathedral's most glorious feature, the massive rose window high on the western wall. The diameter of the entire labyrinth is precisely equal to the diameter of that magnificent window. This creates a profound, hidden symmetry between the floor and the ceiling, between the path walked by human feet and the divine light streaming from above. It is an architectural representation of the medieval maxim, as above, so below, physically linking the earthly journey of the faithful with the heavenly realm. This relationship is completely invisible to anyone walking the labyrinth. It can only be perceived by someone who can see both the floor and the window in a single, unified view, a perspective that, for centuries, was reserved for the clergy in the choir stalls or, symbolically, for God. It is a silent, stunning geometric prayer etched in stone and glass. This intricate design was far more than decorative. It was a functional, deeply powerful tool for spiritual meditation and pilgrimage. For the vast majority of medieval believers, a journey to the Holy Land was an impossible dream, fraught with danger and expense. the labyrinth offered a solution, a substitute pilgrimage right there in the cathedral. Pilgrims would walk the path on their knees, praying and meditating as they navigated its 11 concentric circuits, which were said to represent the path to salvation. The journey to the center symbolized a spiritual ascent to Jerusalem, a meeting with the divine, and the hidden celestial pattern, though unseen, was felt. The knowledge that they were traversing a model of God's ordered universe deepened the experience, reinforcing core theological concepts of harmony, purpose, and the soul's journey back to its creator. The labyrinth was a multi-sensory sermon, a theological argument made not with words but with geometry and movement, designed to guide the believer toward enlightenment one deliberate step at a time. Now, let's move from the solid stone of Siena to the liquid labyrinth of Venice, a city that seems to float miraculously on water. For any visitor gliding in a gondola through its narrow, shadowy canals, the experience is one of intimate, almost magical disorientation, a sense of being lost in a beautiful, aqueous maze. But what if that maze wasn't a maze at all? What if, from a higher vantage point, that apparent chaos resolved into one of the most ambitious celestial diagrams ever attempted? To see it, you must do as the medieval navigators did and ascend the city's many bell towers or campaniles. From that elevated silence, high above the murmur of gondoliers and the lapping of water, a breathtaking pattern emerges. The waterways don't just connect neighborhoods, they trace the very heavens above. Venice's canal network is in fact a hidden, functioning zodiac clock, an astrological chart written not on parchment, but carved into the lagoon itself. The masterpiece of this aquatic astrology is, without question, the Grand Canal itself. From your bird's eye view, its famous, graceful curve is revealed to be anything but random. It is a near-perfect terrestrial imitation of the ecliptic, that great imaginary line in the sky along which the sun, moon, and planets appear to travel throughout the year. This was the central highway of the medieval cosmos, and the Venetians built their own central highway in its precise image, but the design goes far deeper than this single, majestic curve. Look closer at the way smaller canals branch off from the main waterways. Their angles and intersections are not the result of haphazard urban growth. They correspond with astonishing accuracy to the orbital paths and relationships of the planets as understood by medieval astronomers, whose knowledge was a blend of Ptolemaic science and classical astrology. The entire city becomes a giant, stable orrery, a mechanical model of the solar system, but built on a colossal urban scale and frozen in water and stone. This incredible design was far more than a symbolic gesture. It served a profoundly practical purpose for a city whose lifeblood was maritime trade. In an era before detailed nautical charts or GPS, navigation relied on a deep understanding of celestial bodies. By embedding this knowledge directly into the city's layout, Venice created the ultimate training ground for its sailors and merchants. A young navigator could learn to recognize the celestial patterns and their meanings simply by moving through his own city. The correlation between a canal's angle and a planetary orbit, or between a specific canal and a zodiac sign, reinforced the mental maps needed to traverse the Mediterranean. The city itself was a classroom, teaching its citizens to think cosmologically, to see their position on Earth in relation to the heavens. This gave Venetian sailors a legendary edge, allowing them to navigate by night using the stars with a confidence that felt almost second nature because it was literally built into their home. The symbolism, however, was equally powerful and intentional. The alignment of these zodiac canals was carefully calibrated to interact with celestial events on specific, important feast days in the Venetian calendar. On the festival of the city's patron saint, San Marco, or during the Ascension Day marriage ceremony of the Doge to the sea, the sun would set or rise in perfect alignment with a particular canal, flooding it with light in a dramatic spectacle visible only from the right elevated position. This wasn't a coincidence, it was stagecraft of the highest order, a way of demonstrating that Venice wasn't just a part of the cosmic order, it was in harmony with it, blessed by the heavens themselves. The government, closely tied to the church, used this hidden architecture to reinforce its authority and the divine favor upon the Serenissima, the most serene republic. And yet, for all its grandeur and purpose, this stunning celestial map remained, and for most still remains, completely invisible. The gondolier steering his craft beneath a tiny bridge, the merchant unloading spices at a watergate, the housewife leaning from her window, they moved through this grand design unaware of its cosmic scale. They experienced the poetry of Venice on the water, feeling its beauty and complexity intimately, but the prose of its astronomical genius was written in a language only readable from above. This is the defining genius of these medieval illusions. They created a dual reality, a city that functioned perfectly for the people within it while secretly paying homage to a higher cosmic order, a silent testament to the belief that human creation is at its most magnificent when it mirrors the universe. Leaving the floating Zodiac of Venice behind, we journey inland to the formidable stone sentinel of southern France, Carcassonne. From within its walls, the experience is one of overwhelming defensive might. You are surrounded by a seemingly impenetrable fortress of towering stone, a labyrinth of battlements and narrow passageways designed to confuse and deter. But to truly comprehend the genius of Carcassonne, you must do what a besieging army commander could only dream of: ascend to a vantage point high on the surrounding hills and look down. From this commanding perspective, the city's entire purpose is rewritten. It is not merely a fortress, it is a massive stone mandala, a breathtaking geometric diagram of cosmic order and divine protection rendered on an epic scale. The concentric rings of its legendary walls, which from the ground feel like sheer, sequential barriers, are revealed from above to form a precise, radiating pattern of sacred geometry, a symbol of perfection that would have been deeply familiar to the medieval mind. This mandala layout was a masterstroke of psychological warfare, engineered to create powerful optical illusions that played with the perception of any approaching force. The carefully calculated spacing and curvature of the concentric walls, combined with the strategic placement of its 52 towers, create a visual effect of immense depth and expansion. To an army looking up from the plains below, Carcassonne would not appear as a static target. It would seem to grow and loom larger as they approached, its layers unfolding in a way that made estimating its true size and strength nearly impossible. This was intimidation baked directly into the architecture, a deliberate attempt to overwhelm the senses and erode the morale of would-be attackers before a single arrow was ever nocked. The fortress wasn't just strong, it was designed to appear invincible, an endless series of defenses that visually defied comprehension from a ground-level view. It weaponized perspective itself, using the very principles of geometry to project an aura of unconquerable power. Yet, for its builders and inhabitants, this design held a significance far deeper than mere military strategy. In the medieval worldview, geometric perfection was not an abstract concept. It was a direct reflection of the divine mind. God was the great geometer of the universe, and structures that embodied perfect shapes like the circle, the square, and the mandala's radiating symmetry were believed to be imbued with spiritual power and protection. Each concentric ring of Carcassonne's walls corresponded to a layer of spiritual defense, mirroring cosmological diagrams that depicted the soul's journey through ascending realms of consciousness toward enlightenment at the center. The outermost walls represented the physical, material world, the first line of defense against chaos. Each successive inner wall symbolized a higher, more refined spiritual state, with the innermost keep, the heart of the city, representing the divine center, the ultimate sanctuary and connection to God. By walking from the outer gates to the inner court, a citizen or defender was symbolically retracing the path of spiritual ascent, moving from the profane to the sacred, all within the safety of divinely ordained geometry. This fusion of the practical and the metaphysical is what makes Carcassonne such a profound example of medieval ingenuity. The architects were not choosing between building a strong fortress and creating a sacred symbol. They believed these were one and the same. The mathematical precision required to execute the mandala pattern, ensuring the walls were parallel, the spacing exact, and the sight lines perfect, was an act of devotion as much as engineering. They were constructing a prayer in stone, a permanent plea for divine favor that also happened to be one of the most formidable defensive structures in all of Europe. The mandala's power was twofold. It daunted enemies with its imposing illusion while comforting those within with the promise of sacred order, a perfect embodiment of the medieval belief that true security came not just from thick walls, but from aligning human creation with the harmonious blueprint of the cosmos itself. We now travel to the heart of the Renaissance, but to uncover a secret woven into its skyline long before the era of Michelangelo and Da Vinci. The city of Florence, celebrated for its artistic explosion, holds a geometric mystery in its very foundations, a puzzle conceived not during the Renaissance but in the preceding medieval mind. To experience it, you must do as the Florentines have for centuries and escape the crowded, narrow streets of the city center. Make your way up the steep, winding paths to the Piazza Michelangelo or the hilltop church of San Gimignano al Monte. As you turn to catch your breath and gaze back across the Arno River, the entire city spreads out before you like a living map, and it's from this specific, elevated vantage point that the magic happens. The iconic red-tiled dome of the cathedral, the elegant white marble of Giotto's bell tower, and the ancient, octagonal form of the baptistry suddenly stop being three separate, magnificent buildings. From the hillside, they snap into focus as 3 points of a single, perfect, and hidden geometric composition, a divine equation written across the Florentine skyline. The relationship between these structures is anything but accidental. It is a masterclass in applied sacred geometry. The precise distances between the center of the baptistry, the base of the campanile, and the apex of Brunelleschi's dome were meticulously planned to form a perfect Pythagorean triangle. This is the same timeless geometric principle stating that the square of the hypotenuse of a right-angled triangle is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. But the Florentine architects weren't just drawing triangles in the dirt. They were scaling this fundamental mathematical truth to an urban level, embedding a symbol of eternal rationality and cosmic order into the heart of their city. This hidden triangle served as an invisible armature, a geometric skeleton upon which the entire sacred center of Florence was arranged, creating a harmony that is felt intuitively at ground level, but only understood visually from the hills. The genius extends from the spaces between the buildings to the very form of the dome itself. Brunelleschi's magnificent engineering marvel is not simply a beautiful curve. Its specific profile is a direct embodiment of mathematical ratios found throughout the natural world. The rise of the dome, its span, and its curvature are all governed by proportions that mirror those found in seashells, in the branching of trees, and in the human body itself, ratios often associated with the golden mean. This was the medieval belief in the music of the spheres made physical. The cathedral wasn't just a building, it was a microcosm, a model of the universe's inherent order and beauty. By designing the dome with these natural proportions, the architects ensured it would resonate with a deep, subconscious sense of harmony and perfection, making it feel both awe-inspiring and strangely familiar, a man-made mountain that felt as natural and inevitable as one created by God. This reveals the truly intentional and almost playful nature of this grand design. The architects knew that the dense urban fabric of the city would forever hide this geometric secret from the everyday citizen going about their business in the shadow of the cathedral. The full, breathtaking composition was a reward reserved for those willing to make the climb, to gain a higher perspective. It was a visual gift offered to pilgrims, to travelers arriving from the countryside, and to contemplative souls seeking a moment of reflection above the hustle and bustle. By framing their masterpiece within the natural landscape of the surrounding hills, the designers connected man's achievement directly to God's creation. The hills were not a barrier, they were the seating for a celestial theater, offering a privileged view of a performance where architecture, mathematics, and nature sang in perfect harmony. It stands as a powerful metaphor for enlightenment itself. Sometimes the deepest truths and most beautiful visions require us to step back, to climb higher, and to change our point of view. Leaving the harmonious skyline of Florence, we journey now to a different kind of sanctuary for knowledge, the dreaming spires of Oxford. At street level, the city feels like a labyrinth of learning, a seemingly organic maze of cobbled lanes, towering stone walls, and sudden, quiet quadrangles where the air itself seems thick with centuries of scholarly debate. It's easy to get lost in this complexity, to see the layout as a beautiful but accidental accumulation of history. Yet, just as in our previous cities, this ground-level view is a magnificent deception. To uncover Oxford's true design, you must ascend the worn spiral staircase of the University Church of St. Mary the Virgin, or the iconic Tom Tower of Christ Church. From these lofty perches, the entire cityscape reorganizes itself before your eyes. The chaotic maze vanishes, replaced by a breathtakingly precise intellectual instrument. A massive scholarly compass rose, with the ancient colleges and their quadrangles acting as the calibrated points on a giant dial oriented to the four cardinal directions. This alignment was no happy accident of urban planning. The foundational orientation of the oldest colleges, their chapels, libraries, and main gateways was meticulously planned to face true north, south, east, and west. This wasn't just for sunlight or symmetry, it was a profound philosophical statement. In the medieval worldview, the cardinal directions were not merely points on a map but fundamental pillars of an ordered universe. North represented the fixed, eternal realm of divine truth, often associated with theology. South symbolized the warmth of human passion and rhetoric, the domain of the arts. East was the direction of dawn and enlightenment, of philosophy and new beginnings, while West was tied to the setting sun, to water, and to the practical, applied sciences. By aligning their buildings with these cosmic axes, the university founders were physically embedding their institution into the very structure of the cosmos itself. The university was not just in the world, it was a miniature model of the world, a microcosm where every stone was laid in accordance with a grand, universal design. This celestial framework provided the canvas for a second, even more intricate layer of hidden geometry. The individual courtyards of colleges like Merton, New College, and Magdalen were not simply open squares. From above, they resolve into precise geometric shapes, perfect squares, rectangles, and even parallelograms whose proportions correspond directly to the mathematical concepts that were the bedrock of the medieval curriculum, known as the quadrivium. The ratio of a courtyard's length to its width might mirror the harmonic intervals of music theory, a subject explored within its walls. The angles at which pathways converge could reflect the geometric principles of Euclid taught in the lecture halls nearby. The entire university became a three-dimensional textbook, a physical manifestation of the abstract knowledge being pursued within it. A student walking from his geometry lecture in one quadrangle to his astronomy tutorial in another was literally traversing the invisible lines connecting different disciplines of knowledge, his education mapped onto the very stones beneath his feet. This architectural masterpiece served a dual purpose, blending the symbolic with the intensely practical. For the scholars and students who lived and worked within this hidden compass, the design created a powerful, if subconscious, sense of place and purpose. It reinforced the medieval ideal of the university as an ordered community of scholars, a world unto itself that was both protected from and perfectly aligned with the greater universe outside its walls. The design also facilitated the academic rituals that defined daily life. Processional routes for graduation ceremonies or theological debates were laid out along these hidden axial lines, ensuring that the movement of scholars through the city was itself a performance of the ordered knowledge they were dedicating their lives to understanding. Oxford, therefore, was far more than a collection of beautiful old buildings. It was a functioning, breathing diagram of the medieval mind itself, a mind that believed true learning was the journey to understand one's precise and harmonious place within the grand, divine compass of creation. Our journey now takes us to the heart of Central Europe, to a city where alchemy, astronomy, and architecture once intertwined. Prague. Walking through the winding, cobbled streets of the old town today, you feel enveloped by history, surrounded by Gothic spires and Baroque facades that tell 1,000 stories. Yet, beneath this visible beauty lies a far more ancient and cunning design, one that transformed the entire medieval city into a colossal scientific instrument. To witness this seventh illusion, you must undertake the pilgrim's climb to the Prague Castle, high atop the hills overlooking the Vltava River. From the castle's ramparts, as you gaze down upon the red-roofed cityscape below, the seemingly chaotic tangle of streets and squares suddenly resolves into a breathtakingly precise diagram. The urban maze is revealed to be a functional astronomical observatory, a stone and mortar computer designed to track the heavens and mark the passage of time with astonishing accuracy. This was no abstract art project. It was a meticulously engineered system of urban astronomy. The key to its function lies in the precise alignment of specific, long, straight streets with major solar and lunar events on the Bohemian calendar. For instance, on the morning of the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the sun would rise in perfect alignment with a particular narrow lane, flooding it with a brilliant shaft of light that would trace a path directly to the door of a specific church or significant building. Conversely, on the winter solstice, the low-hanging sun would set in flawless alignment with another thoroughfare, casting long, dramatic shadows that pointed like a giant sundial's hand toward a central square. These were not coincidences. Medieval architects and astronomers collaborated to plan these sightlines, using the built environment itself as a permanent, unchanging reference point for predicting seasonal changes, agricultural cycles, and the timing of important religious festivals. The city became a calendar, its streets the gears and its sunlight the hand that told the time of year for all who knew how to read it. The design extended beyond solar alignments to incorporate a giant celestial map. The arrangement of the old town square, the lesser town square, and other open spaces was not random. From the elevated castle view, these squares resolve into a pattern that mirrors the positions of major stars and constellations as they were understood in medieval Bohemian astronomy. The Charles Bridge, with its series of statues, acts not just as a crossing but as a figurative axis mundi, a central pillar connecting the earthly city with the celestial map laid out around it. This provided local astronomers with a fixed, terrestrial grid against which they could track the movements of planets and stars. They could stand on the bridge or in a specific square, and by referencing the alignment of streets and buildings, make accurate observations and predictions without the need for portable and often expensive brass instruments. The city itself was their observatory dome, its stone walls and rooftops serving as the permanent markers on their astrolabe. This incredible integration of science and urban planning served a profoundly practical purpose for the people of medieval Prague. In an age before printed calendars were commonplace, the city's astronomical layout provided a democratic and accessible way to mark time. A farmer bringing goods to market might notice how the sunlight fell across a particular street corner and know it was time to plant a certain crop. A merchant could see the moon rise over a specific rooftop and understand the optimal time to dispatch a trade caravan. The liturgical year was also woven into this design, with alignments highlighting important saints' days and religious holidays, ensuring the rhythm of faith was physically embedded into the daily life of the city. This was knowledge made accessible to everyone, encoded not in fragile books but in the durable stone of the city itself, a communal clock and calendar that never needed winding and could never be lost. And yet, the most captivating aspect of this illusion is its secrecy. For the thousands of people who lived, worked, and traded within these streets, the grand design remained utterly invisible. They experienced the effects the peculiar way light fell on a certain day, the strange chill of a shadow in a specific alley without ever perceiving the cosmic cause. They benefited from the timekeeping function without consciously understanding the mechanism. The full, glorious pattern of Prague's astronomical streets was a secret held by the architects, the astronomers, and the castle elites who had the privilege of the high vantage point. It stands as a powerful testament to the medieval mind's ability to think on a grand scale, to hide sublime complexity within apparent chaos, and to build a world that was both perfectly functional for the people within it and magnificently aligned with the silent, majestic movements of the universe above. From the astronomical precision of Prague, we now travel to the sun-drenched hills of Tuscany, to a city that seems to defy time itself, San Gimignano. Approaching this legendary town, your first impression is one of stark, martial power. A bristling skyline of medieval stone towers piercing the blue Italian sky, standing like ancient sentinels guarding the past. It's a breathtaking sight, but from the winding road below, it feels like a display of raw, competitive wealth, a vertical arms race between feuding families, each building higher than the last to proclaim their status and strength. This ground-level interpretation, however, is merely the overture to a much deeper composition. To hear the true song of San Gimignano, you must step back. Climb the gentle slopes of the surrounding Val d'Elsa and find a vantage point among the olive groves and vineyards. As you turn to face the city from this peaceful distance, the aggressive jumble of towers undergoes a miraculous transformation. The skyline ceases to be a chaotic contest of egos and resolves into something sublime, a perfect visual representation of a musical scale, a silent symphony carved in stone. This was no aesthetic accident. The heights of the remaining 14 towers were not determined by random vanity or the unstable foundations of rival families. They were meticulously planned according to the ancient mathematical principles of Pythagorean tuning, the same ratios that govern the harmonious intervals of music. In this system, specific mathematical relationships between numbers produce consonant, pleasing sounds. The octave, for instance, is a ratio of 2 to 1. The perfect fifth is 3 to 2. The perfect fourth is 4 to 3. The architects of San Gimignano took these abstract musical ratios and translated them into visual architecture. The tallest towers, like the mighty Torre Grossa, represent the fundamental note, the tonic of this architectural chord. The heights of the surrounding towers were then calculated to precise proportions, creating the visual equivalent of harmonic intervals. A tower built to exactly half the height of the tallest would represent the octave. Another, built to 2/3 the height, would form the perfect fifth. From the hillside, your eye doesn't just see a skyline. It instinctively follows these harmonic relationships, jumping from tower to tower in a rhythm that feels inherently balanced, ordered, and strangely beautiful, even if you can't consciously identify why. This breathtaking design was the physical embodiment of one of the most enduring and beautiful beliefs of the medieval world, the music of the spheres. This was the idea that the universe itself was not silent, but was perpetually generating a celestial harmony through the motions of the planets, the sun, and the moon as they moved through the heavens. Each celestial body, based on its speed and orbit, was thought to produce a specific musical note, and together they created a sublime, cosmic symphony that was inaudible to human ears only because we were born into it, like a fish born into water. It was the background music of creation. By designing San Gimignano's skyline to mirror these perfect Pythagorean ratios, the city's planners were attempting to make this inaudible cosmic music visible. They were building a permanent, terrestrial echo of the divine harmony that governed the cosmos, turning their entire city into a monument to the idea that mathematics was the secret language linking heaven and earth. The city wasn't just a place to live. It was a declaration that human art and architecture could and should participate in the universal order. This fusion of the spiritual and the practical gave the towers a dual identity that is often missed. While they certainly functioned as status symbols and defensive structures in the fractious world of medieval Italian politics, their harmonious arrangement served a deeper, more subtle purpose for the citizens within. Living within a skyline built to cosmic musical proportions was believed to have a tangible, beneficial effect on the soul and the community. Just as harmonious music could calm the spirit and inspire elevated thoughts, a harmonious visual environment was thought to promote social order, intellectual clarity, and spiritual peace. The towers, therefore, were not just projecting wealth and power downward into the streets. They were also channeling celestial harmony downward, blessing the city with order and stability. The feuding families, in their competitive drive to build high, were unconsciously participating in a grander design, each tower adding its own note to a chord that was far greater than any individual family's ambition. From the privileged view of the surrounding hills, the true purpose of San Gimignano reveals itself. It is not a monument to conflict, but a lasting testament to the medieval yearning for harmony, a silent song of stone, waiting centuries for us to step back far enough to finally see its music. Now let's travel north to the ancient city of York, a place steeped in Roman, Viking, and medieval history. At its heart stands the magnificent York Minster, one of the world's great cathedrals, and within its stone floor lies a famous medieval labyrinth, a circular maze often walked by pilgrims in quiet meditation. But what if that small, contained maze was merely the centerpiece of a far grander design, a spiritual blueprint that extended far beyond the cathedral walls and into the very streets of the city itself? From ground level, the network of narrow, winding lanes like the Shambles or Stonegate feels charmingly chaotic, a historic tangle born from centuries of organic growth. To see the truth, you must ascend the 275 steps of the Minster's central tower. As you emerge, breathless, into the open air, the city unfolds beneath you in a breathtaking panorama. And from this sacred vantage point, the magic happens. The seemingly random streets suddenly resolve, their curves and intersections connecting to trace a massive, city-scale labyrinth, with the cathedral itself sitting precisely at the center, the ultimate destination of this hidden urban pilgrimage path. This was no mere coincidence of urban planning. The specific turns and angles of the streets leading to the minster, the way Petergate curves gently, the precise junction where Gudrumgate meets Deangate, were meticulously designed to correspond with the spiritual stages of a medieval pilgrimage. The journey to a holy site was never just about the destination. It was a profound process of inner transformation. The physical path was meant to mirror the soul's pathway to God, with its twists representing doubts and challenges, its straightaways symbolizing moments of clarity and grace, and its final turn toward the cathedral embodying the soul's arrival at divine understanding. By walking these streets, even a pilgrim who was utterly unaware of the larger pattern was unconsciously retracing this symbolic spiritual journey. The city itself was guiding them, using the subtle language of urban design to prepare their heart and mind for the awe and reverence of entering the minster. The architects had engineered a sacred experience into the very topography of the city, a three-dimensional meditation manual written in stone and cobblestone. This grand design served a beautifully practical purpose for the thousands of pilgrims who flocked to York. In a crowded, unfamiliar medieval city, finding your way to the cathedral could be a confusing and overwhelming task. This hidden labyrinth pattern provided a natural, intuitive form of wayfinding. While a pilgrim might not consciously recognize the geometric design, the deliberate layout of the streets created a natural flow, gently funneling foot traffic from the city's main gates, and the river landing points directly toward the minster without the need for complex signage. The path felt natural and almost inevitable, reducing disorientation and allowing the pilgrim to maintain a contemplative state rather than a frantic sense of being lost. The city was quite literally designed to be welcoming, to guide the faithful home to its spiritual heart with a quiet, unseen hand. The symbolism, however, ran even deeper, connecting the individual's journey to the universal. The labyrinth is one of humanity's oldest and most enduring symbols found in cultures across the globe. It represents not a maze to be solved with dead ends and tricks, but a single, winding path to a guaranteed center, a metaphor for the certain, if often circuitous, path of the soul toward God. By embedding this universal symbol on a colossal, urban scale, the planners of York were making a powerful theological statement. They were asserting that the entire city, in all its daily bustle of commerce and life, was part of a sacred order. The butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker going about their business in the shambles were all, unknowingly, existing within a giant prayer. The labyrinth pattern unified the sacred and the secular, declaring that the divine was not confined within the cathedral walls, but was woven into the very fabric of the city's daily life. From the tower, the view must have been a profound reassurance to the medieval mind. A visible promise that no matter how tangled and confusing life's journey might seem from within, from a higher perspective, every path ultimately leads to the center. Leaving the silent symphony of San Gimignano's towers, we travel now to the Mediterranean coast, to a city where the energy of the sea meets the weight of ancient stone Barcelona. Wandering through the narrow, shadowy lanes of its Gothic quarter, the experience is one of intimate enclosure. You are surrounded by towering, centuries-old buildings, their facades a patchwork of history, with every turn revealing a secluded plaza or a hidden courtyard. It feels dense, mysterious, and wonderfully labyrinthine, a classic medieval core designed for pedestrians, not for grand vistas. But this ground-level intimacy is a masterful deception. To uncover the 10th astonishing illusion, you must rise above the canopy of terracotta rooftops. From the vantage point of a drone or the upper floors of a modern building, the entire district reorganizes itself. The chaotic maze of streets vanishes, replaced by a breathtaking geometric clarity. The Gothic quarter is revealed to be a massive, eight-pointed star fortress, its main thoroughfares radiating outward from central points like the spokes of a celestial wheel, a hidden symbol of divine protection carved directly into the urban plan. This stellar design was far more than a symbolic gesture. It was a brilliant feat of military engineering that weaponized the very principles of perspective. The radiating streets, which from above form such a precise pattern, were engineered to create powerful optical illusions at ground level for both defenders and potential attackers. For the citizens and guards within the city, the long, straight sightlines down these avenues provided overlapping fields of vision, allowing sentries in watchtowers to see clear to the next defensive point and coordinate the city's defense with incredible efficiency. But for an invading force that might breach the outer walls, the effect would have been psychologically disorienting. The converging angles of the buildings and the radiating streets would make the urban core appear to expand in all directions, creating a sense of the city being far larger and more labyrinthine than it actually was. This was a defensive strategy that attacked the mind as much as the body, designed to confuse, slow down, and demoralize an enemy who expected a straightforward fight, turning the city itself into a passive yet formidable defender. The choice of an eight-pointed star was deeply intentional, rooted in a medieval cosmological symbolism that would have been instantly recognizable to the educated elite. In medieval iconography, the eight-pointed star, or the octagram, was a potent symbol of regeneration, resurrection, and the perfect order of the cosmos. It represented the harmonious union of the spiritual and the material, the square representing the four elements of the earthly world, intersecting with another square, rotated 45 degrees representing the spiritual realm. By imprinting this symbol onto the very layout of their city, Barcelona's planners were not just building a fortress, they were invoking a permanent, magical form of protection. They believed that sacred geometry possessed an inherent power, that by aligning their city with these perfect cosmic forms, they were inviting divine favor and safeguarding the community from chaos, disease, and evil. The streets themselves became a permanent prayer for protection, a charm etched in stone that was believed to be active regardless of whether its inhabitants were consciously aware of its form. This celestial connection was made spectacularly tangible through a breathtaking annual event. The architects carefully calibrated the angles of the stars' points to align with specific astronomical events, most dramatically the summer solstice sunrise. On the longest day of the year, the rising sun in the northeast would position itself perfectly at the end of one of the star's key radiating avenues. As it climbed, its light would funnel directly down the narrow canyon of the street, flooding the stone passage with an intense, focused beam of light that would appear to set the entire corridor ablaze. This dramatic illumination would then travel along the street in a precise, predictable path, a phenomenon that could only be fully witnessed and appreciated from an elevated position, such as a church bell tower or a palace balcony. For the few privileged to witness it, this was not a simple trick of the light. It was a divine endorsement, a yearly performance where the heavens themselves seemed to acknowledge and activate the city's sacred geometry, blessing Barcelona and confirming its place within a protected and ordered universe. It was the ultimate expression of the medieval ambition to weave the cosmic and the urban into a single, inseparable tapestry. From the sacred star of Barcelona, we now set sail for the windswept coasts of northern Germany, to the powerful merchant republic of Lübeck, the undisputed queen of the Hanseatic League. Walking its streets today, you feel the enduring wealth of its brick Gothic architecture, the solid, practical confidence of a city built not by emperors or bishops, but by merchants and mariners. The layout feels logical, efficient, a network of thoroughfares designed for moving goods from the docks to the warehouses. But this pragmatic appearance conceals a far more cunning design, one that turned the entire city into a colossal nautical instrument. To witness this 11th illusion, you must climb the dizzying height of St. Mary's Church, the tallest steeple in the old town. From this commanding view over the sea of red-tiled roofs, the city's straightforward plan undergoes a miraculous transformation. It resolves into a giant stone compass rose, its main avenues not just pointing to city gates, but aligning with the very forces that built Lübeck's empire, the prevailing winds and the sea lanes of the Baltic. This was urban planning as advanced maritime technology. The orientation of the city's primary streets was meticulously calibrated to align with the dominant trade wind directions that governed sailing in the medieval Baltic. The route leading from the River Trave inland, for instance, might align perfectly with the west-southwesterlies that would fill the sails of a cog ship departing for London or Bruges. Another major thoroughfare could point directly toward the northeasterlies needed for a return journey from Stockholm or Novgorod. For a merchant standing at the docks, unsure of the weather conditions beyond the harbor mouth, the city itself provided a constant, unchanging reference. By simply looking down the length of a specific street, he could visualize the wind direction he would need, reinforcing the mental maps and weather lore that were critical for a successful and safe voyage. The city was a permanent training aid, its streets acting as terrestrial arrows pointing the way to fortune across the unpredictable sea. The brilliance of this hidden compass extends from the direction of the streets to the very orientation of the buildings themselves. The gables of the grandest merchant homes and guild halls were not simply turned toward the street for show. Their precise alignment was often a silent declaration of their owner's commercial reach. A wealthy trader whose business was primarily with the Swedish island of Gotland might have his warehouse and counting house oriented so that its long axis pointed directly toward Visby. Another merchant whose fortune was built on Norwegian timber might have a building angled toward Bergen. This created a hidden architectural ledger of Lübeck's economic network. From the church tower, an educated viewer could literally read the city's trade relationships in the tilt of the rooftops, seeing a physical map of economic influence etched into the very fabric of the city. It was a way of embedding identity and success into the stones of one's home, a permanent claim to a specific piece of the Hanseatic trading world. This design served a profound symbolic purpose, reinforcing the collective identity of the merchant elite who governed the city. The Hanseatic League was a loose federation of trading cities, held together not by a king or an army, but by shared commercial interests, mutual protection, and a common culture of maritime enterprise. By designing their city as a giant compass, the merchants of Lübeck were making a powerful statement about their place in the world. They were asserting that their city was not just a point on a map, but the central pivot around which the commerce of Northern Europe revolved. The compass rose is by its nature a symbol of centrality and orientation. Lübeck's layout declared it the navigational heart of the Hanseatic world, the fixed point from which all routes departed and to which all wealth returned. It was a boast in brick and stone, a confident projection of their self-image as the masters of the Baltic Sea. And yet, for all its grandeur and intention, this magnificent maritime compass remained a secret known fully only to those who had the privilege of the high view, the city councillors, the master mariners, and the loftiest merchants. For the dockworkers, the shopkeepers, and the sailors drinking in the taverns, the city simply felt right. It felt logical and intuitive. They experienced the benefit of its orientation. The way the wind seemed to funnel down certain streets, the easy flow from port to market without ever perceiving the grand design. They navigated by the city's hidden logic every day, their lives guided by an invisible hand that had tuned the urban environment to the rhythm of the tides and the turn of the winds. Lübeck stands as an ultimate testament to the medieval merchant's worldview, a universe where everything, even the layout of a city, could be leveraged for commercial advantage, and where the deepest secrets of success were not written in ledgers alone, but were quietly, magnificently set in stone. Leaving the maritime compass of Lübeck behind, we journey now to the sun-baked banks of the Rhône River in southern France, to a city that once served as the center of the Christian world, Avignon. During the 14th century, for nearly 70 years, the seat of the papacy was not in Rome but here, in this fortified Provençal city, creating a period known as the Avignon papacy. From within its walls, the experience is one of overwhelming papal power. You are surrounded by the colossal, imposing Gothic architecture of the Palais des Papes, a fortress palace that projects an image of unshakable authority and divine right. But the architects of this papal capital designed a secret into the very skyline, a symbol meant to be seen not from the crowded streets, but from a specific, strategic point of contemplation across the river. To witness the 12th astonishing illusion, you must cross the ancient St. Bénézet Bridge and climb the gentle slopes of the opposite bank. As you turn to face the city, with the Palais des Papes crowning the rocky outcrop, the entire assemblage of palaces, churches, and monasteries suddenly coalesces into a single, unmistakable shape against the horizon. The perfect form of a giant patriarchal cross, the very symbol of the papacy itself. This was not a subtle hint, it was a bold, architectural declaration of sovereignty. The patriarchal cross, with its two horizontal bars, is a potent symbol historically associated with the highest ranks of Christian ecclesiastical authority, particularly the office of the Pope. By arranging the major buildings of their new capital to form this specific symbol, the papal court was making an undeniable statement to the world, to any visiting dignitary, ambassador, or pilgrim approaching from the east. The first clear view of the city would present this giant emblem of papal power etched against the sky. It was a nonverbal proclamation that Avignon was no temporary refuge. It was the new, rightful, and God-ordained heart of Christendom. This hidden in plain sight symbol served as constant visual propaganda, reinforcing the legitimacy and supreme authority of the Avignon popes during a period of immense political and religious turmoil, silently answering their critics and asserting their divinely sanctioned rule over all they surveyed. The genius of this design extended beyond mere symbolism into the realm of sophisticated optical engineering. The arrangement of buildings within the cross pattern was meticulously planned to manipulate perspective from key vantage points, primarily from across the river. The placement of the smaller, secondary buildings along the arms of the cross, and the strategic use of larger structures like the cathedral and the palace itself created forced perspectives that made the seat of papal power appear even more dominant and monumental than it already was. From the opposite bank, the Palais des Papes doesn't just look big, it looks utterly immense, overwhelming, and unassailable, its proportions exaggerated by the carefully framed context of the surrounding architecture. This was psychological power projected through stone, a deliberate attempt to awe and intimidate, to make any challenger to papal authority feel insignificant before approaching the city gates. The city itself was managed to perform a narrative of invincible divine right. This architectural stagecraft was intimately woven into the liturgical and ceremonial life of the papal court. The axes of the giant cross did not exist in a vacuum. They aligned perfectly with the primary processional routes used during the most important religious ceremonies of the year. On high holy days, when the Pope and his cardinals would parade through the streets in a magnificent display of pageantry and faith, their path would trace the central vertical axis of the cross. The stops they made, the churches they visited, the blessings they bestowed, all were positioned at key points within this hidden geometric framework. For the participants in the procession, the experience was one of profound spiritual theater. For the few privileged observers who could gain a high vantage point, perhaps from a tower within the city or a hill across the river, the full spectacle was revealed. The slow, solemn movement of the glittering procession was not just moving through streets, it was animating the giant cross, bringing the symbol of faith to life with every step. The urban design and the liturgical practice became one inseparable performance, a fusion of faith, politics, and architecture designed to demonstrate that in Avignon, every stone, every street, and every ceremony proclaimed the glory and the authority of the Pope. Leaving the symbolic cross of Avignon, we travel southwest to the ancient, fortified city of Toledo, Spain, a place perched dramatically on a granite hill, encircled by a sharp bend in the Tagus River. For centuries, this was a legendary frontier, a city where Christian, Muslim, and Jewish cultures not only met but intermingled, creating a rich and often tense tapestry of intellectual and spiritual exchange. Walking its steep, labyrinthine streets today, you feel this layered history in every stone. It's a place of hidden courtyards, sudden dead ends, and narrow passages that seem to guard their secrets closely. The layout feels organic, almost defensive, a maze designed to confuse invaders and provide shade from the fierce Spanish sun. But this intricate ground-level experience is merely the handle of a much larger weapon. To see the city's true form, you must do what sentries and scouts have done for a millennium: climb the dusty footpaths of the hills across the river. From the elevated vantage point of the Mirador del Val, as the setting sun casts the city into sharp relief, the entire urban plan undergoes a breathtaking metamorphosis. The chaotic tangle of streets resolves, the city's silhouette hardening into the unmistakable, formidable shape of a massive, unsheathed sword, laid out upon the hill as if by a giant's hand. This is the stunning sword of faith, and its components are not arbitrary. The design is meticulously precise. The mighty Toledo Cathedral, with its soaring spire and robust, fortress-like apse, serves as the sword's ornate crossguard and hilt, the firm grip of faith from which the blade is wielded. From this solid base, the city's main thoroughfares, including the Cal Ancha and the Cal Commercio, align perfectly to form the long, straight, and deadly blade, its point aimed decisively south, the historical direction from which both Moorish invasions and the Reconquista's final campaigns would have come. This was far more than a clever visual trick. It was a powerful, permanent statement of identity carved into the very topography of the city, in a place that was for so long a bloody fault line between civilizations. The sword's alignment was a defiant declaration. It proclaimed Toledo not just as a city, but as a bastion, a spiritual and military defender of the Christian faith on the Iberian Peninsula. It was a symbol of resilience, a reminder to all who approached that this was a city prepared to fight for its beliefs, its shape an everlasting vow of protection engraved upon the landscape itself. The architects of this grand illusion infused it with a layer of celestial theater that transformed it from a static symbol into a dynamic, annual spectacle. The orientation of this giant urban blade was carefully calibrated to interact with the sun's journey across the sky on specific, highly significant dates in the liturgical calendar. Most dramatically, during the feast of St. James the Moorslayer, the patron saint of Spain, the low-angled light of the setting sun would perform a miracle of light and shadow. From the viewpoint across the river, Observers would witness the sun's rays rake directly along the length of the main thoroughfares, causing the stone buildings to cast long, precise shadows that deepen the contrast. The central blade of the city would appear to ignite, a gleaming line of golden light tracing from the cathedral hilt all the way to the city's southern tip, as if the sword itself had been set ablaze with divine fire. This was not a hidden event, it was a public, though distant, manifestation of divine favor. For the citizens within the city going about their evening rituals, the effect was invisible. But for those watching from the outside, pilgrims arriving on the road, soldiers encamped in the valleys, or the city's own leaders on the walls, it was a breathtaking affirmation. It visually connected the city's earthly struggle to the heavens above, a yearly sign that their defiance was blessed and their faith was literally illuminating the darkness. This magnificent design therefore operated on multiple levels of meaning. For the diverse populace living within the sword's outline, the merchants in the blade, the clergy in the hilt, the artisans in the pommel, the symbol was subconscious. They experienced its practical benefits. The main thoroughfares provided efficient routes for trade and communication, while the cathedral's central position reinforced its spiritual authority. They lived within a symbol of defiant faith, yet their daily reality was one of complex cultural negotiation and coexistence. The true, overwhelming power of the symbol was reserved for the external viewer, for the approaching traveler or potential adversary. It was a work of psychological architecture, a form of non-verbal communication designed to project power, stability, and divine sanction to the world outside the walls. Toledo's Sword of Faith stands as a profound testament to the medieval mind's ability to weave together the practical, the spiritual, and the strategic into a single, coherent form. It was a city that functioned perfectly for those within its embrace, while silently projecting an image of unwavering strength and celestial grace to all who dared to look upon it from afar. From the defiant sword of Toledo, we journey north to a city where stone and water perform a more delicate, ever-changing dance, the enchanting canal city of Bruges. At street level, the experience is one of intimate, postcard-perfect charm. You stroll along cobbled quaysides where centuries-old guild houses with ornate stepped gables cast their perfect doubles onto the still, dark waters of the canals. It feels like a scene from a fairy tale, a beautiful but seemingly straightforward play of light and architecture. Yet this serene beauty is the opening act of a far more sophisticated performance. To witness the 14th illusion in its full glory, you must ascend the 366 steps of the belfry of Bruges. As you emerge high above the market square, the city unveils its secret. The canals are not merely waterways, they are liquid mirrors, carefully positioned to form a dynamic, interactive diagram of aquatic geometry, a visual puzzle whose pieces shift and reassemble with the passing of every hour and the turning of every tide. This was no happy accident of urban planning. The specific placement of key buildings along the canals, the grand facades of the Berg, the precise curve of the Rosenhodkoi, the alignment of the old fish market was the result of meticulous calculation. Medieval architects designed these structures with a dual purpose in mind: to be impressive from the street and to perform in perfect harmony with their reflections. They engineered building fronts with deliberate symmetries, specific window placements, and carefully calculated roof angles so that when the water was still, their reflection would complete a perfect geometric shape. A building's gable might be designed so that its reflection creates a flawless diamond or a precise isosceles triangle with the original structure. From the belfry's height, these hidden patterns emerge clearly. The city transforms into a collection of interlocking shapes, circles, ovals, and complex polygons formed not by stone, but by the ephemeral meeting of stone and water. The entire city becomes a grand exercise in applied mathematics, a testament to a sophisticated understanding of reflection and perspective that we often wrongly assume only arrived with the Renaissance. This mastery of aquatic geometry reveals a medieval fascination with the mathematics of reflection that went far beyond mere aesthetics. The builders of Bruges demonstrated a practical grasp of optical principles, understanding how the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection long before these concepts were formally codified in textbooks. They knew that the apparent depth of a reflection could be manipulated by the width of the canal and the height of the opposing buildings, creating illusions of doubled structures that seem to plunge endlessly into a watery underworld. This knowledge allowed them to stage breathtaking visual effects. During the high tides, when the water level rose to perfectly align with specific quayside markings, the reflections would achieve maximum clarity and symmetry. At low tide, or when a breeze ruffled the surface, the patterns would dissolve into abstraction, only to reform hours later with the rhythmic certainty of the sea. The city was a dynamic canvas, its appearance changing not with the seasons, but with the lunar-driven pulse of the tides, a constant, silent spectacle of transformation. Perhaps the most captivating feature of this water mirror is its interactive, almost playful nature. Unlike the static stone patterns of other cities, Bruges' illusion is alive. It requires the cooperation of nature, the stillness of the air, the phase of the moon, the angle of the sun. A building that appears solitary and grounded at noon might, by dusk, become half of a magnificent, symmetrical palace floating on a glassy canal. This transforms a simple walk through the city into an unintentional participation in a grand artistic experiment. A citizen crossing a bridge might momentarily shatter a perfect reflection with their shadow, only to have it reform behind them. A swan gliding through a canal would become the central point of a radiating geometric pattern, its wake temporarily rewriting the hidden diagram. For the medieval resident, these would have been familiar, perhaps unnoticed wonders. For us, understanding the intent behind it, it feels like discovering a city that is consciously performing for an audience of sky and water, a masterpiece of medieval design that remains as fluid and captivating today as it was 600 years ago. But the genius of Siena's shell extends far beyond its famous sloping square. To discover its next great secret, you must pull your gaze away from the Campo and let it wander across the entire city, tracing the intricate web of streets that climb and descend its 3 hills. From ground level, these districts, known as contrada, feel like fiercely independent villages, each with its own fountain, flag, and social identity, their boundaries seemingly drawn by centuries of local rivalry and tradition. Yet this perception of proud independence is yet another magnificent deception. To see the truth, you must find one of the city's highest vantage points, perhaps the untouched terrace of a palazzo or the bell tower of a lesser-known church. As you look out over the sea of terracotta roofs, the 17 contrada and the streets that connect them cease to be a collection of separate entities. They coalesce into a single, breathtaking, and unified form, the perfect shape of a giant scallop shell, its radial lines flowing like currents in stone, all converging with deliberate intent toward the spiritual heart of the city, the black and white striped majesty of the Siena Cathedral. This was urban planning as sacred metaphor, a design choice of profound spiritual significance. The scallop shell was not a random shape. It was the universal symbol of the pilgrim, specifically those undertaking the arduous journey to the shrine of St. James in Santiago de Compostela, one of the 3 great pilgrimages of the medieval Christian world. Pilgrims would wear or carry a scallop shell to identify themselves, and the shell's grooves, which all converge at a single point, became a powerful symbol of the many paths of life, all ultimately leading to God. By imprinting this symbol onto the very layout of their city, Siena's planners were making a powerful declaration. They were asserting that their entire city was, in itself, a place of pilgrimage. Every citizen, in their daily comings and goings through the shell's grooves, was symbolically reenacting a spiritual journey, their life's path inevitably leading toward divine grace, represented by the cathedral at the shell's apex. The city became a permanent sermon, a physical reminder that faith was not a destination but a journey woven into the fabric of everyday life. This grand design found its most spectacular and practical expression during the city's most famous event, the Palio, the breathtakingly intense horse race run twice each summer in the Piazza del Campo. The shell pattern was not just a passive symbol, it was the master blueprint for the city's greatest spectacle. The 17 contrada whose territories form the body of the shell are the competitors in this historic rivalry. On the day of the Palio, each contrada organizes a magnificent procession from its own fountain and headquarters within its segment of the shell, all moving inward along the radial streets toward the Campo. This transforms the entire city into a living, breathing pageant. As you watch from above, you see these 17 vibrant, colorful processions, each with its drummers, flag throwers, and costumed representatives, flowing like rivers of silk and sound down the grooves of the giant shell, all converging on the central piazza. The urban design literally choreographs the event, guiding the participants and building anticipation as the entire city funnels its energy toward the moment of the race. The shell is not just observed, it is performed, activated by the feet of thousands of citizens celebrating their unique identity within a perfectly unified whole. The architects also employed this radial layout to masterful effect in the realm of visual perception, using it to manipulate the journey of a pilgrim or visitor in a deeply psychological way. The streets that form the shell's converging grooves were carefully engineered with subtle changes in width, slope, and building height. As you walk from the outer edges of the city inward toward the cathedral, these optical tricks create a compelling effect of forced perspective. The cathedral, though still distant, appears to draw nearer much faster than it actually does. This shrinking of the perceived distance alleviates the fatigue of the steep climb, offering psychological encouragement to the weary traveler. It creates a sense of inevitable arrival, making the spiritual goal feel both grand and attainable. Conversely, for a citizen leaving the cathedral and moving outward into their daily life, the expanding perspective makes the city feel vast and full of possibility. This was architecture in service of emotion, using the silent language of line and form to uplift the spirit and ease the body on its journey, a testament to the medieval mind's deep understanding of human experience and its desire to shape that experience through the built environment. Crossing from the watery reflections of Bruges, we find ourselves in another Flemish masterpiece of canals and cobblestones, the city of Ghent. Here, the skyline is dominated by 3 iconic medieval towers, each representing a different pillar of society: the soaring belfry of Ghent, symbolizing the power and autonomy of the citizenry; the majestic St. Bavo Cathedral, a testament to spiritual authority; and the robust St. Nicholas Church, a hub of commercial activity and trade guilds. From within the city squares, these structures feel like separate entities, each commanding its own space and telling its own story of medieval life. But to unlock the city's greatest secret, you must do what the architects intended and take a boat onto the river Lay or climb the opposite bank. As you find the correct vantage point and turn to face the city, the 3 towers suddenly cease to stand alone. They snap into a precise, invisible geometric formation, their peaks forming the 3 perfect points of a massive Pythagorean triangle etched against the sky, a hidden equation of stone that connects the secular, the sacred, and the commercial in a single, breathtaking theorem. This was far more than a fortunate accident of urban planning. It was a masterful application of sacred mathematics on a colossal scale. The Pythagorean theorem, the idea that in a right-angled triangle, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides, was more than a classroom abstraction to the medieval mind. It was a fundamental law of the universe, a divine principle of harmony and order that governed everything from music to astronomy. By embedding this perfect triangle into the heart of their city, Ghent's builders were making a profound philosophical statement. They were asserting that the relationship between the city's three governing powers, the civic, the religious, and the commercial, was not one of competition or conflict, but one of perfect, balanced interdependence. Just as the three sides of the triangle are inextricably linked by an unbreakable mathematical truth, so too were these three facets of urban life. The stability and prosperity of the entire city depended on their harmonious alignment, a concept made permanently visible yet hidden in the silent dialogue between the towers. The genius of this alignment extends from the simple shape into a deeper layer of cosmic harmony. The precise distances between the towers were not arbitrary measurements. They were carefully calculated to form specific harmonic proportions that correspond to the foundational intervals of music. The ratio of the distance from the belfry to St. Bavo and from St. Bavo to St. Nicholas might create a perfect fifth, the most consonant and stable interval in music after the octave. Another distance could form a perfect fourth. These ratios were the building blocks of the medieval musical scale, and by extension, they were believed to be the very mathematical fabric of the cosmos itself, the infamous music of the spheres. This means that the spatial relationship between the towers was designed to literally resonate with the same harmonic order that governed the movement of the planets. The city was not just a triangle, it was a frozen chord, a permanent musical harmony expressed in the language of architecture and urban space, a silent symphony of stone that only the heavens could hear. This celestial connection was further reinforced by the tower's heights and the specific angular relationships between them when viewed from the optimal spot across the river. The architects calculated the height of each tower not just for grandeur or defensive sightlines, but to create precise angles of elevation from that key viewpoint. The angle from the base of one tower to the peak of another might align with known astronomical measurements, such as the altitude of the sun at the summer solstice or the position of a particularly important star. This turned the entire city skyline into a giant, fixed astronomical reference tool. A scholar or timekeeper standing on the riverbank could, by sighting along the peaks of the towers, make accurate predictions about the changing seasons or the passage of time, using the city itself as his observatory. The urban landscape became a functional scientific instrument, a permanent clock and calendar built into the very silhouette of daily life. Ultimately, this magnificent hidden triangle served as the ultimate symbol of civic unity and idealized medieval society. In an age often marked by tension between wealthy merchants, powerful clergy, and independent-minded citizens, the geometric alignment of their respective towers stood as a permanent, silent reminder of their essential interdependence. The commercial wealth generated by the guilds housed near St. Nicholas's Church funded the civic projects protected by the belfry, while the spiritual authority emanating from St. Bavo Cathedral provided the moral and ethical framework that governed them all. They were three sides of the same triangle, and the city could not stand if one were missing. This architectural pact was a visual ideal, a representation of the world as it should be, balanced, harmonious, and governed by divine mathematical order. For the citizens of Ghent living their lives beneath these towers, the full geometric perfection was invisible. felt only as an intuitive sense of place and balance. But for those who knew to look from across the river, the city revealed its truest self, not a collection of competing powers, but a single, unified, and perfectly harmonious whole. But the ingenuity of the Bologna Archiginnasio goes far beyond a simple static map. This was a living, breathing classroom designed for experiential learning. Medieval professors of astronomy and navigation, known as astrology in the curriculum, would lead their students out of the dusty lecture halls and onto the very streets of the district. Standing in the specific piazzas that served as focal points within the portico network, a teacher could point upward and use the colonnades as a giant, fixed grid against the night sky. He could instruct his pupils to find a specific column alignment, say, the double archway near the church of San Giacomo Maggiore, and then have them look directly above it to locate the corresponding constellation, perhaps Ursa Major, the Great Bear, which was crucial for finding the North Star. This transformed abstract celestial theory into tangible, unforgettable practice. A student wasn't just memorizing star patterns from an expensive, hand-copied manuscript. He was learning to navigate by connecting the architecture of his own city to the architecture of the heavens, a skill that would be vital for any future merchant, explorer, or scholar. The city itself became the ultimate teaching aid, a three-dimensional textbook that was always open, always available, and free to use. This celestial design was also ingeniously programmed to interact with the sun, creating a dynamic calendar of light and shadow that marked the passage of time with silent, daily performances. The spacing between the columns and the precise orientation of the porticos were calculated to create specific solar effects during key astronomical events. On the equinoxes, for example, when day and night are of equal length, the low-angled sun would cast shadows that perfectly bisected certain courtyards, creating a razor-sharp line of light and dark that crawled across the pavement at a predictable pace. During the solstices, the sun's rays would funnel down a specific alleyway formed by two parallel porticos, flooding the entire passage with a concentrated beam of light at noon. These were not just pretty effects, they were functional instruments. A professor could use the position of a shadow falling across a particular carved marker on a building's facade to demonstrate the changing altitude of the sun throughout the year. Students could gather to witness these events, using them to calibrate their own simple astrolabes or to understand the predictive models that governed the medieval calendar, linking their lessons directly to the cosmic clockwork happening overhead. This profound integration of education into the urban fabric speaks to a medieval worldview that saw no separation between knowledge and daily life. For the scholars and citizens of Bologna, the universe was not a distant abstraction to be studied in isolation. It was a system of divine order that was present in every stone, every shadow, and every star. By encoding this cosmic knowledge into the very streets they walked every day, the university and the city planners were making a powerful statement. That learning was not confined to the classroom, but was woven into the very experience of being a citizen. To live in and navigate the Archiginnasio district was to constantly, if subconsciously, engage with the principles of astronomy and geometry. This created an environment that was perpetually stimulating intellectual curiosity, where a simple walk to the market could turn into a lesson in celestial mechanics. It represents a breathtakingly holistic approach to education, one that understood the built environment not just as a container for learning, but as an active, participatory teacher in its own right, silently guiding generations of students toward a deeper understanding of their place in an ordered and magnificent universe. But the true genius of this design lies not in its static perfection, but in its dynamic interaction with the city's daily life. The architects didn't just impose a geometric grid, They used this hidden framework to orchestrate the experience of moving through the city in a way that was both practical and spiritually uplifting. The main processional route leading to the cathedral's west facade, for example, was designed using the cathedral's own nave width as its module. As a pilgrim or citizen walked this path, the buildings on either side gradually increased in height at a precise ratio, creating a subtle, almost subconscious effect of being funneled gently but inevitably toward the sacred heart of the city. This narrowing of the skyline and the calculated increase in vertical scale made the cathedral appear to grow larger and more imposing with every step, building a sense of awe and anticipation that culminated in the breathtaking reveal of the full facade at the journey's end. This was psychological architecture of the highest order, using mathematical certainty to choreograph human emotion, ensuring that every approach to the cathedral felt like a gradual ascent from the mundane world into a realm of divine grandeur. This urban mirroring served a profound theological purpose, extending the cathedral's sanctity far beyond its physical walls. In the medieval worldview, the cathedral was not just a building where God resided. It was a symbolic representation of the heavenly Jerusalem, a perfect city of God. By mapping the cathedral's sacred proportions onto the actual city of Strasbourg, the planners were making a bold declaration. The entire community, in all its bustling, commercial, sometimes messy reality, was part of this divine order. The butcher's shop, the merchant's house, the public well all were situated within a hidden geometric field of grace, their placement and proportions silently echoing the harmony of the cathedral itself. This created a powerful conceptual link between the sacred and the secular, suggesting that daily life, when conducted within this divinely ordained framework, was itself a form of worship. The city was not separate from the cathedral. It was its logical extension, a living, breathing embodiment of its sacred principles, where every citizen, simply by going about their business, participated in a grand architectural liturgy. The sophistication required to execute this city-wide dimension code is nothing short of astonishing, especially considering the tools available. Medieval master builders worked without satellite imagery or computer-aided design, relying instead on ropes, measuring rods, and complex geometric diagrams scratched onto parchment or tracing floors. To scale up the proportions of a single building to an entire urban district, across pre-existing property lines and uneven topography, required an extraordinary grasp of applied mathematics and spatial reasoning. They likely used a system of proportional squares and circles, establishing key points in the city from which to measure out the geometric armature, ensuring that every new building, lane, or plaza conformed to the invisible master plan. This was a long-term project, a vision that would take generations to fully realize, requiring an unbroken chain of architects and city planners all working toward the same hidden goal. The fact that they achieved such seamless harmony is a testament to a shared cultural and spiritual vision, a collective commitment to building a world that was not just functional, but perfectly aligned with what they believed was the divine blueprint for creation itself. Now we journey into the very heart of Tuscany, to the sun-drenched hill town of Montepulciano, famous for its robust vino noble wine. Winding your way up its steep, narrow main street from the town gate, the experience is one of charming, almost chaotic ascent. You pass wine cellars carved into the volcanic rock, family-run enotkas, and centuries-old palazzos, all packed tightly together in a seemingly haphazard climb toward the piazza high above. It feels organic, unplanned, a classic medieval town that grew naturally over time. But this intimate, ground-level perspective is the final layer of a magnificent deception. To witness the 19th illusion, you must do what the wine merchants and farmers have done for centuries: descend into the valley below. find a spot among the sprawling vineyards that blanket the hillsides, turn, and look back up at the town silhouetted against the sky. From this agricultural vantage point, the entire urban plan undergoes a breathtaking metamorphosis. The town's silhouette hardens, its form resolving into the unmistakable shape of a colossal wine barrel lying on its side, a perfect tribute to the very craft that built its fortune. The components of this giant barrel are meticulously precise. The town's concentric streets, which from within feel like simple level pathways carved into the hill, are revealed from the valley to be the sturdy iron hoops that bind the barrel together. These circular roads, like the famed Via di Voltaire and Via di Colazzi, trace perfect rings around the town's circumference. Meanwhile, the steep, radial streets that climb directly up the hill, the ones that leave visitors breathless, transform into the wooden staves of the barrel, all converging toward the central piazza, which acts as the bunghole, the opening at the barrel's heart. This was not a whimsical aesthetic choice. It was a profound declaration of identity, a way for the town to physically embody its economic and cultural soul. In a region where rival hill towns boasted of their saints or their military might, Montepulciano's skyline proudly proclaimed its true devotion, the craft of viticulture. It was a symbol of civic pride engineered on a monumental scale, a permanent reminder to everyone in the valley below that the entire community was dedicated to the art of the vine. This grand design was far more than symbolic. It was a masterpiece of practical engineering that directly served the town's most important industry. The radial streets, those steep staves, were not just for foot traffic. They were the primary arteries for the wine trade, engineered at a specific, manageable gradient that allowed ox-drawn carts laden with heavy oak barrels to descend slowly and controllably from the production facilities at the top of the town down to the main gates and out into the wider world. The concentric circular roads, the hoops, functioned as distribution rings. They connected the radial routes, allowing for easy lateral movement of goods between the various wine cellars, monasteries, and noble estates that each produced their own vintage. This created an incredibly efficient internal logistics network, a medieval distribution hub where the product could flow smoothly from producer to market with minimal congestion or delay. The urban layout wasn't just shaped like a barrel. It was engineered to function like one, a perfectly tuned machine for the production and export of its precious liquid cargo. Perhaps the most ingenious aspect of the design, however, was its manipulation of the local environment to create ideal conditions for wine storage itself. The town's position on a ridge of porous volcanic tufa rock was strategic. The architects who planned the radial and concentric streets understood airflow and thermal mass. The narrow, deep streets shaded by tall buildings functioned as natural wind tunnels, drawing cool, fresh air up from the valley floor and channeling it through the town. This constant, gentle breeze provided vital ventilation for the countless cantinas and wine cellars carved into the rock beneath the buildings, preventing mold and maintaining a stable atmosphere. Simultaneously, the dense mass of stone buildings and the volcanic rock itself acted as a phenomenal thermal regulator, absorbing heat during the day and slowly releasing it at night. This minimized temperature fluctuations, which is critical for the delicate aging process of wine. The entire town became a giant, passive climate control system, its very form and fabric working in concert to create the perfect microclimates for nurturing its most valuable product from grape to bottle. This seamless integration of symbolic form, practical function, and environmental science reveals a medieval mindset that saw no division between art, commerce, and the natural world. The citizens living within the barrel experienced its benefits every day. The ease of moving their goods, the perfect coolness of their cellars, likely without ever perceiving the grand visual pattern they were a part of. The full, glorious illusion was a secret shared between the town planners and the farmers toiling in the vineyards below, a visual punchline that only revealed itself from the one vantage point that truly mattered, the very land that gave the wine its character. Montepulciano stands as a powerful testament to a time when a town's design was a direct and honest reflection of its purpose, a place where you could literally walk through the symbol of your own livelihood, and where the greatest masterpiece was not just the wine in the bottle, but the ingenious living barrel on the hill that crafted it. Perched atop the dramatic peak of Monte Titano, the ancient Republic of San Marino presents a vision of defiant independence, its three iconic stone towers clinging to the mountain's spine like eagles' nests. From within the fortress walls, the experience is one of sheer strategic prowess. Each tower commands breathtaking views of the surrounding Italian countryside, serving as a vigilant sentinel against any potential threat. But to truly comprehend the genius of this mountain stronghold, you must undertake the journey to the summit of an adjacent peak, perhaps Mount Carpegna or the slopes of Montefeltro. As you turn to face San Marino from this distant vantage point, the three separate fortresses undergo a miraculous transformation. They cease to be isolated outposts and instead snap into a precise, geometric formation with the natural spires of the mountain itself, together forming a massive, protective mandala etched against the sky, a sacred diagram of defense that integrated the divine power of symbolism with the brutal reality of medieval warfare. This was not a pattern chosen for its beauty alone. It was a sophisticated defensive system that weaponized the very landscape. The three towers, Guaita, Sesta, and Monteil, were not placed arbitrarily on the most convenient rock outcroppings. Their positions were the result of meticulous calculation, chosen to create interlocking, overlapping fields of vision and fields of fire. From the elevated view of the opposing mountain, this geometric arrangement reveals its true purpose. The towers form a perfect triangular formation, with each one capable of seeing and supporting the other two. If one tower were ever besieged, defenders in the other two could signal each other and coordinate a response using mirrors by day or torches by night, creating a seamless web of communication that made the entire defensive system far greater than the sum of its parts. This mandala was not just a symbol, it was a functional command and control network, a medieval battlespace management system carved into the mountain itself. The mandala's power extended beyond practical communication into the realm of psychological warfare, employing masterful optical illusions to daunt any approaching army. The specific alignment of the towers with the natural pinnacles of Monte Titano was designed to create a forced perspective effect when viewed from the valley below. To an advancing force, the fortified complex would not appear as three distinct towers. Instead, the man-made structures and the natural rock formations would blend into a single, impossibly large, and multi-layered fortress that seemed to grow directly out of the mountain's very essence. This visual trick made estimating the true scale of the defenses nearly impossible, making the stronghold appear more vast, more impregnable, and more formidable than it actually was. It was a deliberate strategy to amplify the sense of awe and intimidation, to erode the morale of would-be attackers before they even nocked an arrow, suggesting that the mountain itself was rising up to defend the Republic. This breathtaking integration of the built and natural environments represents a pinnacle of medieval landscape architecture, a philosophy that saw no separation between human construction and God's creation. The architects of San Marino did not seek to conquer the mountain with their towers. They sought to collaborate with it, to enhance its natural defensibility with structures that complemented and completed its existing form. They understood the language of the land, its sightlines, its shadows, its intimidating presence, and they composed their fortifications as a harmonious extension of that natural power. This approach required a deep, intuitive understanding of topography, geology, and perspective, demonstrating a level of environmental design that we often mistakenly believe only emerged in the modern era. They were not just building on the land, they were thinking with it, using the mountain's own grandeur as their primary building material. Underpinning this practical and psychological strategy was a layer of profound cosmological symbolism that would have been instantly meaningful to the medieval mind. The mandala, with its concentric circles and geometric patterns, is one of humanity's oldest symbols of cosmic order, wholeness, and protection. By designing their fortress to embody this form from a distance, the founders of San Marino were invoking a higher power. They were asserting that their tiny republic was not just protected by stone and soldier, but by a divine, universal order. The mandala's pattern was believed to possess an inherent spiritual power to ward off chaos and evil, creating a sacred boundary that extended far beyond the physical walls. This fusion of the spiritual and the strategic was a hallmark of medieval thought. The most effective defense was one that operated on both the earthly and the celestial planes, making San Marino a fortress not only of stone, but of faith, a testament to the belief that true security comes from aligning human endeavor with the harmonious and protective order of the cosmos itself. Beneath the charming, cliff-top streets of Orvieto lies a secret world, a labyrinth of tunnels and shafts completely invisible to the citizens who walked above them for centuries. This is not a natural cave system. It is a breathtaking feat of medieval engineering, a hidden geometric network carved by hand into the volcanic tufa rock. For generations, the full scope and intention of this underground city remained a mystery, its complexity obscured by darkness and accessible only through narrow, crumbling entrances. It took the advent of a modern marvel, LiDAR imaging technology, to finally pull back the curtain on this 21st illusion. By scanning from above, LiDAR maps the ground in 3 dimensions using laser light, revealing structures hidden beneath the surface without ever needing to break ground. When researchers aimed this technology at Orvieto, the results were nothing short of revolutionary. The seemingly random collection of wells, cisterns, and escape tunnels snapped into focus, revealing a meticulously planned, city-wide hydraulic system arranged in a precise pattern of sacred geometry, a hidden diagram of perfect circles, intersecting lines, and symbolic shapes etched deep into the earth itself. This subterranean network was a masterpiece of practical necessity, born from Orvieto's unique and precarious position atop a steep volcanic plateau. In times of siege, surface wells were the first target of any attacking army, and a city without water was a city doomed to surrender. The solution was to go deep, creating a redundant and secretive water supply that could not be easily poisoned or cut off. But the medieval engineers did far more than just dig holes. They designed an interconnected web of shafts and tunnels that allowed water to be collected, stored, and distributed throughout the city with astonishing efficiency. Rainwater was channeled from rooftops and piazzas into primary cisterns through a network of hidden conduits. From these central reservoirs, a series of secondary tunnels, all following calculated gradients, allowed water to flow by gravity to smaller, neighborhood wells and private cellars. This was a municipal water utility built half a millennium before modern plumbing, ensuring the city's survival through the longest and most brutal of sieges. The LiDAR maps show this system was not added piecemeal. It was conceived as a single, holistic entity, a testament to a level of urban planning and hydrological understanding that rewrites our perception of medieval capabilities. Yet, to view this system as merely practical is to miss half of its genius. The arrangement of these wells and tunnels was governed by the same sacred geometric principles that guided the construction of the magnificent Duomo on the surface. To primary cisterns were not placed for maximum convenience alone. They were positioned to form perfect equilateral triangles or hexagrams with other key points in the network, patterns rich with spiritual significance that represented the harmony of the Trinity or the interlocking of the divine and the earthly. This fusion of function and faith reveals the medieval worldview in its purest form. Even something as mundane as ensuring a water supply was an act of devotion, an attempt to align human necessity with cosmic order. The engineers believed that building according to these divine ratios would imbue the water itself with a kind of spiritual purity, blessing the city both physically and metaphysically. The entire underground network was, in effect, a silent, continuous prayer for survival, its sacred pattern active and powerful whether the citizens drawing water from their local well were conscious of it or not. This hidden geometry also created a series of captivating optical illusions at ground level, playing with perception in a way that felt almost magical. The openings of the wells or pozzi were not simply holes in the ground. Their placement and the specific carving of their interiors were designed to manipulate the view from different angles. A well opening might appear as a simple circle when viewed from directly above, but if you approached it from a specific pathway or staircase, the perspective would shift, and the opening would seem to morph into a perfect ovoid or even a star-shaped pattern, depending on the complex interplay of light and shadow deep within the shaft. Furthermore, the relationship between well openings was carefully calculated. From one specific spot in a piazza, two wellheads might appear to align perfectly, creating a visual tunnel that hinted at their hidden connection deep below, while from any other position they seemed completely independent. These were not accidents, they were deliberate perceptual tricks, a subtle layer of artistry applied to essential infrastructure, reminding those with a discerning eye that nothing in this city was ever quite as simple as it first appeared. The ultimate expression of this dual-purpose design is the famed Pozzo di San Patrizio, or St. Patrick's Well, though its famous double helix ramp is merely the most visible part of a much larger hidden system. Commissioned in the 16th century but built with purely medieval ingenuity, the well is a staggering 200 feet deep, but its true illusion lies in its revolutionary design. Two separate spiraling staircases were carved, one winding down and the other leading up, allowing mules to carry water sacks in a continuous, non-intersecting flow. This design ensured the water supply remained uncontaminated and efficient, a perfectly practical solution. Yet, from an analytical perspective, the entire structure is a study in perfect mathematical proportions and symmetry. The well's diameter, its depth, and the gradient of its ramps all conform to harmonic ratios, making it not just a functional engine but a giant, subterranean geometric instrument. It stands as the crowning achievement of Orvieto's hidden network, a stunning monument to the medieval mind's ability to weave together absolute practicality with profound symbolic meaning, creating systems of breathtaking sophistication that remained for centuries, a secret known only to the rock itself and the few who dared to descend into its depths. Our final stop takes us to the sun-drenched eastern edge of the medieval world, to the legendary island fortress of Rhodes, the mighty headquarters of the Knights Hospitaller. Within its towering walls, the experience is one of formidable strength and purposeful chaos. A labyrinth of cobbled streets designed to slow invaders, vaulted halls built for pious knights, and shaded courtyards where cultures of East and West converge. It feels like the ultimate defensive machine, every alley and archway serving the singular goal of survival against siege. But to unlock the city's most elegant secret, you must ascend to the highest ramparts of the Palace of the Grand Master. From this supreme vantage point, the entire urban maze beneath you dissolves, reordering itself into a breathtaking and wholly different kind of instrument. The street layout resolves into a perfect, massive wind rose, a giant compass diagram etched in stone, its main avenues aligning not with arbitrary points, but with the very breath of the Mediterranean itself, the seasonal winds that governed life, trade, and war. This was urban planning as an act of symbiotic harmony with nature. The Knights of St. John, as seasoned mariners who had traveled from Jerusalem to Cyprus before establishing their base on Rhodes, possessed an intimate life-or-death understanding of the wind. They knew the Meltemi, the fierce northwesterly that blew in the summer, could either speed a friendly fleet to harbor or dash an enemy armada against the rocks. They respected the sirocco, the humid southeasterly that carried dust from Africa, signaling a change in season. Instead of fighting these forces, they invited them into the very blueprint of their city. Primary thoroughfares were meticulously oriented to channel these prevailing winds, turning the entire urban fabric into a giant ventilation system. The main street leading from the Liberty Gate, for instance, aligns perfectly to catch the cooling Meltemi, funneling its fresh, dry air deep into the city's heart, providing natural air conditioning that alleviated the intense summer heat and cleared away stagnant air that could lead to disease. This wasn't just comfortable, it was a critical public health measure, a way of using architecture to ensure the well-being of a crowded population within a confined space. For the knights and sailors who called Rhodes home, this hidden wind rose was far more than a climate control system. It was an essential, permanent navigation aid etched into the stone beneath their feet. In an era before reliable magnetic compasses, wind direction was a primary tool for orientation. A knight disembarking from a long voyage at the commercial harbor could immediately look up the main avenue stretching before him, and by feeling the wind on his face and seeing its alignment with the street, know his cardinal direction without a second thought. This constant, unconscious recalibration was vital for defenders manning the walls. During the chaos of an attack, with smoke obscuring the sun and confusion reigning, a soldier could feel the familiar push of the wind against his back, note that he was on a street aligned with the west wind, and instantly know his position relative to the sea gate or the palace. The city itself became a tactile, ever-present compass, its silent streets whispering directional secrets to those who had learned their language, allowing for faster mobilization and more coordinated defense against any threat. This brilliant functionality was then elevated into the realm of symbolic identity through the incorporation of knightly heraldry. The wind rose pattern was not a simple, stark diagram. It was embellished and articulated through the architecture that lined its axes. The 8 primary points of the wind rose often terminated in, or were marked by the auberges, the inns or lodges where knights from the different langues or ethnic regions of the order resided. The auberge of France might anchor the north point, while the auberge of Italy defined the south. Furthermore, the grand public buildings, fountains, and even the pattern of different colored cobblestones used at major intersections often incorporated the 8-pointed Maltese cross, the symbol of the Hospitaller order. This transformed the wind rose from a mere navigational tool into a giant, sprawling coat of arms. From the ramparts, a commander could look down and see the entire city as a declaration of the order's identity, a statement that they were masters of navigation, guardians of the sea lanes, and a brotherhood united under a single, cosmic symbol, with their very home organized around the principles that defined their existence. The true mastery of the Rhodian design lies in its beautiful, multi-layered functionality. A single, broad avenue leading from the harbor did not serve just one purpose. It was simultaneously a grand processional route for religious ceremonies, a vital commercial artery for moving goods, a primary channel for defensive troop movements, and a key vent for the summer wind. This efficiency of design meant that every stone served multiple masters: the practical, the spiritual, the economic, and the strategic. There was no division between the sacred and the mundane. The same street that carried the wind that kept a baker's shop cool also carried the knight who protected that shop, and both were aligned to a star that guided the ship that brought the baker his flour. The city operated as a single, integrated organism, where every element was interconnected and every function reinforced another. This holistic approach created a resilience that allowed the Knights of Rhodes to withstand epic sieges and maintain their island stronghold for centuries. Their success built as much upon the silent, intelligent guidance of their wind-aligned streets as upon the strength of their swords and the steadfastness of their faith. These 22 astonishing illusions completely reshape our understanding of the medieval world, revealing a civilization of breathtaking sophistication that has been hiding in plain sight for centuries. We so often picture this era as a dark age of superstition and simplicity, a long wait for the brilliance of the Renaissance to finally dawn. But these hidden cityscapes tell a profoundly different story. They show us a time when architects and planners were not just builders of functional shelters, but were visionary artists, mathematicians, and astronomers, weaving complex cosmic ideas into the very fabric of daily life. Their cities were far more than collections of buildings. They were dual reality creations, operating perfectly for the people within them, while simultaneously serving as symbolic canvases expressing a deep, harmonious connection between the earthly and the divine. Every cobblestone, every canal, every towering spire was part of a grand, invisible design, a silent language of sacred geometry, precise astronomy, and spiritual aspiration written on a scale so vast it could only be read by the heavens themselves. The most captivating aspect of this story is the incredible patience of these designs. They remained clandestine masterpieces for hundreds of years, their full glory a secret kept from the very societies that built and maintained them. Generations of merchants, pilgrims, and citizens walked these patterned streets, utterly unaware of the magnificent celestial maps unfolding beneath their feet. These illusions waited centuries for their audience, trusting that someday the right perspective would come along to reveal their truth. That moment arrived not with a historical discovery in a dusty archive, but with a technological leap that granted us a godlike view from above. The advent of aerial photography, satellite imagery, and drone technology has handed us the key to a door we never knew was locked, allowing us to finally see what the architects could only imagine. This perspective shift is more than just a new way of looking at old cities. It is a fundamental rewriting of history, forcing us to replace our simplistic narratives with a much richer, more complex appreciation of pre-Renaissance genius. What emerges from this elevated view is a powerful lesson about perception itself. The greatest illusion of all is not the hidden solar calendar or the aquatic zodiac. It is our own limited perspective. For centuries, we judged medieval urban design based solely on the ground-level experience, missing the grand, unifying vision that was always there. This reminds us that truth and beauty are often layered, and that our first impression is rarely the whole story. It challenges us to remain humble and curious, to always be willing to change our vantage point, whether we are looking at an ancient city or a complex problem in our own lives. The medieval architects teach us that some of the most profound wonders are not immediately apparent. They require us to step back, to climb higher, and to look at the familiar with entirely new eyes. Their hidden cities stand as a permanent invitation to seek a higher perspective, promising that if we do, we might just discover a world of unexpected order, beauty, and meaning waiting to be revealed. If these glimpses into the minds of medieval architects have sparked your curiosity, I would love to hear about your own discoveries. Have you ever wandered through an ancient city and felt there was a hidden order to its streets, or noticed a strange alignment that made you wonder? Share your stories and observations in the comments below. Your personal experience might just be the clue that helps someone else see a familiar place in a completely new light. To make sure you don't miss our next adventure into history's hidden layers, be sure to subscribe to the channel and tap that bell icon to enable notifications. Next week, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most enchanting secrets of Gothic design: how master builders encoded complex musical harmonies into the very stone of their cathedrals, creating structures that don't just stand in silence but actually sing. When the wind blows from a specific direction at a certain speed, these buildings become giant stone instruments, their towers and spires humming with chords and harmonics that were composed centuries ago. It's a stunning fusion of art, science, and spirituality that you truly have to hear to believe. So until then, keep your eyes open and your curiosity sharp. Look up at the skylines, down at the cobblestones, and all around at the urban landscapes you thought you knew, because the greatest stories are rarely written in books. They're etched into the world around us, waiting for anyone willing to look a little closer.